Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we reach the end of Marvel's pre-Return of the Jedi run with issue number 80 of the Marvel series this time. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. Again, the story we're looking at this time is Star Wars number 80 from Marvel Comics, entitled Ellie. Now, you can also find this these days in the pages of Star Wars Omnibus A Long Time Ago, Volume 4, which takes us past Return of the Jedi, at least by a little bit. You can also find it in the pages in black and white of Classic Star Wars A Long Time Ago, issue number 6 of that Prestige format series, in which, of course, we have black and white versions of these stories here. This one, that's the titular character there, Ellie, that droid that's technically an Imperial droid, or supposed to be, at this point, an Imperial droid, pressed into service, so to speak. And this is sort of the continuation and the culmination of the storyline begun back in Last Bane, that sort of weird, cutesy one where we had the little Lashbees that eventually become the huge hooks whenever they hit puberty and such, kind of that goofy story in which Danny finally leaves the Rebels after joining them previously in Fool's Bounty and such. This is a pretty impactful tale. It's an important tale in the grand scheme of things for Star Wars. It was an attempt in the Marvel era to explain some of the things happening in Return of the Jedi, and it's also just a poignant story in and of itself, especially for those who really like droid characters. Remember that our heroes have been looking for Yam Argo and Tay Vanis, two rebels who seem to have gotten secret information about something the Empire is doing that's big for the rebellion. They need to get that information. And they found that in Last Bane, Yam Argo had already died. He'd crashed and died on Last Bane, that planet, so he's already out of the picture. Since then, they've been following the trail of Tay Vanis. They follow him to Iskalon, find out about Gamondar and Telfree and such. They go on Gamondar and think they're going to find his droid, that K3PX model. Turns out that it's a droid that's faking it, owned by Vader. It winds up betraying Lando and the others while they're there. And they kind of bounced back and forth. They wind up in Chantanus of the Stars, going to that space station, looking for more information left behind, and that information is like a trail of breadcrumbs, eventually pointing them to the planet that they're on in this story. Now, the planet is Deneskar. It did not have a name in this story. That was later sort of a retcon name just applied to this planet that had already appeared in this story. But what we have is Leia and 3PO and Luke are on a mission to find Tay Vanis here. And we actually start in media res, in the middle of the tale, where they are just barely missing being caught by stormtroopers. They wind up meeting this droid, LE914, aka Ellie. That's the color version of that one that I showed you in black and white just a moment ago. When they ask her about Tay Vanis and, have you seen him? He stopped here at some point. We want to catch up with our friend. You maybe know where he went. As soon as she punches that into the computer, Imperials charge in. Luke has to cut his way through them to save them. But Ellie decides to go with them. Seems a little weird that as they're escaping, this droid, who not only wants to escape with them, but also takes a blaster bolt meant for C-3PO, right? She pushes 3PO out of the way, takes the shot, and she's apparently blaster-proof at this point, some kind of shielding to her. She goes with them. Makes it a little odd to begin with. And she says, hey, I got the information. I know where Tay Vanis went, and points them to the right planet. When they get to the planet, they find his downed X-Wing. He had been pursued by Darth Vader. And inside, there is a message that would only be retrieved by Rebels because it's coded. If you don't enter the right code, which the Rebels know, it would have not played. And it basically says, look, I hope you reach me in time, and tells why they had this sort of connect-the-dots type of trail. Basically what happened was that in the Bothan system, he and Yam Argo found important information from Bothan spies. They were then supposed to take that back to the Rebels. They wound up being pursued by Vader. Yam went to go get help from the Rebel fleet, and unfortunately crashed on Last Bane, but they didn't know that at the time. And Tay Vanis, so that he could continue to be tracked by the Rebels and yet not by the Imperials, was bouncing from world to world in a predetermined order that he and Yam Argo had come up with. However, when he's finally being pursued by Vader directly and is going to crash down on this world, realizing that his time is up, before leaving that last port of call, he gave the tapes to his droid that was then left behind. He reveals that that droid is Ellie. And if he doesn't respond by a certain time, then she's supposed to destroy the tapes. Like, oh crap, it's been so long. Ellie probably destroyed the tapes. However, when they chase down Ellie, or try to chase down Ellie, they have no luck. Ellie's just gone. at that point. They think, oh crap, she's destroyed the tapes, she's gone, and yes, another droid has just screwed us up, just like that K3PX droid. At least this one really was Tay Vanis' droid, but still, a droid has screwed up this mission. They wind up going and searching for Tay Vanis on the world, going to the fortress of the Imperials on the world, who are heard bragging. A couple of officers heard bragging about wiping out the population of the planet. After we'd wiped out the leaders in a few villages, the survivors took arms against us. Can you imagine? You know, like, how dare they, the savages, stand up against us? They wind up holding one of those braggarts at gunpoint, or blaster point, and find the cell of Tay Vanis. When they get there, though, a hologram plays of Darth Vader. The Imperial tries to get the drop on them, and Leia winds up shooting him basically in the face and killing him. The message left by Vader is basically saying, look, guess what? I already caught Tay Vanis. He is in the cell that you're right in front of. But I made sure that information didn't get out so that you, the rebels, and some of my Imperial competition, they'd be led on wild goose chases, and it would keep them and you busy. But I'm not heartless. So here, I've got a gift for you. And inside the cell, they find Tay Vanis, tortured by Vader to the point where basically most of his sanity, there you go, most of his sanity has fled from him. And behind them in walks Ellie, faithful droid of Tay Vanis, saying, you know, do you really think that saving his life would be a kindness if you tried to get him out of here? Look what's been done to him. You know, they ask her, you know, wait a second, he said you were supposed to destroy the tapes. She takes out the tapes and gives them to C-3PO, believing that it would be safe with Leia and Luke and C-3PO, saying, you know, yes, he gave those orders, but I had to override the orders because he was always right about hope of rescue, and since he believed truly that help would come, I believed it too, and I overrode those instructions. So she hands off the tapes, and in a very poignant moment, this droid, who we've actually grown to kind of like very quickly in this story, cradles the dead body, or not the dead body, but the broken body and broken-minded Tay Vanis, and then we don't see it, we just kind of see them standing in the hallway, then a bright flash of light, then Luke pounding his fist on the pavement, and then Luke and Leia briefly hugging before they say that, you know, they're going to blow up the reactor of that base because Tay Vanis and Ellie deserve a memorial. So Ellie essentially cradling him and then destroying herself, taking Tay Vanis with her, with Tay Vanis now sort of finding the peace that he couldn't because of what Vader had done to his mind when he was locked in that cell. A great moment of selflessness from this droid that we had seen briefly being selfless earlier, but really seeing it here. Sort of the kind of thing you would expect maybe C-3PO or R2-D2 to do for Luke if it really came down to it at this point, or any of the Solo children and such, for instance. It's kind of Ellie's version of Chewbacca dying while saving Anakin Solo on Cern Padal. I mean, it's the same type of emotional impact, just not with the character that we've known for a very long time. On the way out, we also get some more dialogue from Luke as he's talking on the communicator to Admiral Akbar. It's the first time Admiral Akbar is actually referenced in the Marvel series. He showed up in the newspaper strips. The Marvel series was only referencing from the first time here. Luke says, "Yes, Admiral, we're on our way back to the Falcon now. We'll head for the rendezvous point at once, sir, with the Bothan tapes. No, sir, I don't think our transmission's being monitored. There's probably no one left who could do it. Vanis, sir, he was gone before we reached here, but he left the tapes for us in a very safe place. No, Admiral Akbar, his first naming there were no other survivors." And we get the poignant last image of C-3PO in the rain, with the rain puddling and sort of mimicking tears underneath his eye sockets there. And this sets up the data we found from the Bothan spies for Return of the Jedi. Yes, Shadows of the Empire will come in and add more to it, more information from Bothan spies, to be combined with this information here. But for the 80s, this was our way of knowing how Return of the Jedi got set up with the Bothan information about the Death Star 2. And as I already mentioned, it is also the last issue of the Marvel series to take place prior to Return of the Jedi. From here, it's Return of the Jedi, and then post Return of the Jedi EU for the very first time ever, which we'll get to in the very near future. So, this begs the question, is this story, Ellie, a very poignant tale and nice tale, is this an essential read, aside from just being one of the highlights of Mary Jo Duffy's run? I would say yes, it is. Yeah, a lot of the ground is covered with the whole Bothan Spies thing by Shadows of the Empire. But this is another of those sources, and it's a really good story, and gives you the Marvel side of how all this was taking shape prior to Return of the Jedi. No, it's not as impactful as some others, and Shadows of the Empire somewhat renders it less important. But it's a really good story, and I think if you're reading the Marvel stuff or have a curiosity about the Marvel stuff, you'd be doing yourself a disservice to skip this issue. It is one of the best of the pre-Return of the Jedi materials from the Marvel series. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.